Yeah, Janneke, yeah, maybe indeed that's really interesting, because I know also from a pharmaceutical company perspective, and you personally, you also have a quite strong vision on what value constitutes. And I think you, Teus already gave it from the perspective of the patients with Parkinson's disease, but how do you see the definition of value? One of the most easy but most complex words as well, I think. So curious to hear that.
No, thank you, Casper, for the question. And of course, I totally agree with Teus that patient value is a extremely important factor that we need to take into account to determine the overall value of an intervention. But to me, there are three other factors as well that we use when we talk about, what is the value of an intervention? Could be a medicine, could be something else. So the first one is indeed patient value, right? What matters to the patient? What outcomes matter to the patient? The second one is clinical value, and they may not always be the same thing. So clinical value often is measured with very specific efficacy and safety measures, while patient value might be something like fatigue that is maybe not always included in the pure clinical measures. So patient value, clinical value, healthcare system value, which is, for example, if a medicine, let's say for heart failure, can reduce hospital admissions, that has a value to the healthcare system. So there's a cost reduction there. And then the fourth element of value that we think should be taken into account is what we call societal value. So this, for example, includes a loss of work, right? So if a patient has a disease, that means that they have to miss days, work days. That, of course, has an impact on society, on tax, etc. So that is how I would define the value of an intervention with these four measures.
And that sounds to me, at least, and I think hopefully for everybody, quite holistic. And that then also means, if you describe it this way, there's value for everybody. So then where you think, I would think at least, if it's so obvious and so clear and so much to gain, why are we not delivering it all the time? So in your view, what's then standing in the way of getting there?
Yeah, no, great question. Actually, there's quite a lot standing in the way, I think. Maybe one technical point and then a more holistic point. The technical point, I suppose, is on the societal value. I mean, this is the value that actually today doesn't really get taken into account when the value of an intervention is measured in many cases, because the budget is siloed, right? The benefit of a patient maybe being able to work again or work more sits somewhere else, doesn't sit with the health minister, but sits with the finance minister or somewhere else. So often that value is actually missing from the overall evaluation, which I think is a shame. But maybe more holistically, what I think is one of the big challenges and also opportunities in many of our healthcare systems is a bit similar to what Koen described before with the supply and demand equation that you had, where actually in many diseases, a lot of deaths and a lot of morbidity, a lot of suffering could already be prevented if we only apply properly what is already available to us. So of course we need more research and innovation to tackle diseases that are still untackleable today, as many aspects of Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, for example. But if you look at cardiovascular disease, 3/4 of the deaths today of what is the biggest killer worldwide, right, cardiovascular disease, 3/4 of the deaths could be prevented if we would be able to bring together all these patients out there that need interventions with what is already available today in the system. So there are many bottlenecks. It's a bit like a train where you actually have a lot of seats in the train. You have all these patients in the platform, but when the door opens, it takes a lot of time for everybody to get out and other people to get in again to reach that capacity. So in the healthcare system, at least from an intervention perspective, different therapeutics, different medicines, in cardiovascular disease, if we would manage to get all these patients out there to everything that's already available today, we would prevent 3/4 of the current number of deaths. So that is enormous. And this is where, it's complex, of course, to remove those bottlenecks. But I think this is where we all need to work together, all the different stakeholders, pharmaceutical companies, healthcare providers, payers, patients, everybody need to work together to remove those bottlenecks so that we can have a significantly more impact on patients' lives.